Welcome to the Know It's Some podcast, bringing you the widest variety of conversational interviews for a well-rounded perspective on life. Because while it's true, nobody likes a know-it-all, it's also good to know it's some. Here's your host, Steve Platt.
That's right. Welcome back to the Know It's Some podcast. I'm your host, Steve Platt, and this week's guest is my good friend and Brazilian Jiu Jitsu instructor, Charles Harriott. Charles has traveled the world teaching Brazilian Jiu Jitsu with Brazilian Jiu Jitsu Globetrotters and their camps as an instructor for them. He's also the Leglocks 101 instructor over on bjjfanatics.com. He's given seminars, private lessons. He has been teaching martial arts since about the age of 13 years old, and he knows his stuff. If you are interested in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, he is the guy you want to reach out to. And if you are already a Brazilian Jiu Jitsu instructor and you have your own gym somewhere, he's the one that you'd want to reach out to come teach classes at your gym so that you could take a vacation and keep your gym open. He has substituted at gyms in that manner all over the world, to include Tel Aviv, Israel. Right now, I think he's out in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He's been there, done that. Brazilian Jiu Jitsu is an incredible discipline to learn. I myself have been dabbling in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu for years now. As you guys know, I am a black belt in the Marine Corps Mixed Martial Arts program, and this is just something that is near and dear to me. I had a lot of fun with this conversation. I think martial arts can bring a lot to your life. If you have not tried it out, you should at least give it a shot once and see if it's something that you can introduce to your routine. I think that it would be greatly beneficial. Folks, please welcome to the show my good friend, Charles Harriott. Hey, Charles, welcome to the Know It's Some podcast. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
It's an honor to have you on. Folks don't know your background, so I'm going to go ahead and just briefly tell them that you are a jiu-jitsu guru, in my opinion, and I can say that because I don't have to be humble when I'm talking about you. I'm really, really impressed with your martial arts background. It's expansive. I was kind of going over it a little earlier, and I was just really surprised at how well-rounded it is. You've studied American Kenpo, Judo, Jiu-Jitsu, a number of different disciplines. And I was just really impressed. But I always like to start with my guests kind of like going back. And I guess my first question, like where I'd like to start, is what first interested you in martial arts in general? Like, what was it that first grabbed you about martial arts?
I was a little boy, and my parents, wisely or unwisely, let me go see the Ninja Turtles movie. And I walked out of the theater and decided that I was going to be a ninja. And ever since that age, like, I was obsessed with anything martial arts. And my dad ended up finding this guy who was teaching Taekwondo out of his garage and put me in lessons with him. And that kind of was what kicked it all off. And then over the years, I ended up just kind of, that was the one consistent thing in my life the whole way through, because from there through, like, it was Taekwondo, and then unfortunately, like 3 years later, my father passed away, and so like that was really traumatic. And so I was 6 years old, and then right then when we got back from the funeral, because my father passed away in Jamaica, so like we had to go to Jamaica for the funeral. As soon as I get back, turns out my Taekwondo instructor is selling the school, and it's like that, like, male figure in my life is leaving, and there's a new guy taking over, and he teaches karate. And like, to market it to us, like, oh yeah, it's the same thing. It's not the same thing at all. And so like, I ended up it was just kind of the one place that I knew for most of my life. Like, every day after school, that's where I was going. And it wasn't like, looking back at like the actual art that I was learning, like, it wasn't anything too special. It's like most of the martial arts when you're a kid are just pretty much like punches and kicks, and like,
right.
Maybe you break a board, but like the having that one thing that like was a steady thing when, like, you know, I'm 6 years old and I have my uncle telling me you're the man of the house and madness like that. And I was just like, so I'm supposed to protect my family. I'm 6. Like that. Like, that's like when you're 6, you believe that. That's stuff that adults tell you. And I'm sitting there like, well, I guess I should train hard.
You're watching Karate Kid over and over.
Yeah, I was. I watched all those movies, the best of the best, like all those karate movies when you're a kid, like, and Jackie Chan. Like, and I genuinely at a childish age thought that like if I trained hard enough, like I could be a ninja or be invincible or whatever. And then like as time goes on, you get wake up calls over the years.
Right.
So like the first wake up call I had was like when I did kickboxing for the first time, because like in karate and point karate, it's like a game of tag. You touch someone, boop, you win.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought I could fight because I could do that. And then I got to spar continuously or in the kickboxing style, and like I hit them, boop, and then they kept hitting me. And like, wait, I'm like, oh, so you have to hit them more than once. So it's not just a game of tag. Okay. And then that changed how I was sparring, and I met some friends. And then I had another big wake up call when I went to college and I visited an MMA gym. And my very first day, because I don't really, I guess, do things wisely, I was put in the cage with one of the professional fighters my first day, and pretty much had like, because back in the day, like they didn't teach you things properly. They just fought. And so I had a pretty much professional match with one of their fighters. And like, I was doing great on my feet. I've been punching and kicking my whole life. But then like I get taken down to the floor and I'm like, oh, well, this sucks. I don't know anything down here. And then like I asked the guy how long he'd been training. And he's like, oh, I've been training like 5-6 years. And they're like, how long have you been wrestling? Like 2 years. I'm like, oh, so someone can take 2 years of wrestling and like my 15 years of training means nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that sucks.
Yeah, that's got to be a wake up call.
And so that's how I got into grappling and some, like, it's a very long story, so I'm not going to like belabor it with all the details, but that was another big wake up call. And that's what kind of got me into grappling arts. And then sooner or later, further on, I did some judo and did some finally Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, which slowly took over from all the other things that I did. Because I was doing at that point in time like kung fu and kickboxing and karate and judo, and like slowly one by one, in order to like have enough time to get truly good at Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, I just cut them one by one. Until now, like I pretty much just do Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. Like I'll do some kickboxing like once a month or something. Like I should do it more, but like it's just so addictive that it slowly just steals all your time from the other things that you're doing.
It's funny you said that about about how some martial arts systems are very much like boop and you're done.
Yeah.
Because when I was in the Marine Corps, you know, we have the Marine Corps mixed martial arts program. They call it McMAP. It's like maybe the third or fourth iteration the Marine Corps had over the years in terms of hand-to-hand combat, and it's what they've had for the last, I don't know, maybe 20 years now. But what it did was it borrowed from a lot of those different disciplines, borrows from jiu-jitsu, borrows from judo, borrows from a few others, but they adapt it for combat. So instead of like boop, you're done, like you scored, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
like it's like a little bit more life or death. And for whatever reason, that didn't register with me right away. So I'm in boot camp, you know, they're training you to kill, they're training you in firearms and a number of different things. But when it came to martial arts, like I still was looking at it almost like they're teaching me a sport at first.
Mm-hmm.
And then as it progressed, I realized, you know, kind of that whole thing of, oh, this is not a sport. Like this is meant to be a fallback for me in a very serious time. So I started taking it a little bit more seriously and got into jiu-jitsu in Southern California and kind of fell in love with it the way that you did. But I guess all that to say, I learned that you have to kind of focus on a discipline, because if you try to be a jack of all trades, it's very, very difficult. Even the professionals that fight MMA, UFC, right? Like they have their strong points and their weak points. Like some have better ground games, some are better strikers, right?
Oh yeah, it's like being a triathlete. The comparison, I think it's the most apt one, is being a mixed martial artist is like being a triathlete. And so like it's very, very hard to be equally good at all the elements of fighting. I think the closest person ever to be a true all-rounder was Georges St. Pierre, and that like he was originally, you know, he was a karate guy, he was a striker, but then like suddenly now he's an elite level wrestler. I think one of the few people who, at least wrestling for MMA, like got to that level where he's taking down wrestlers who have a way better wrestling pedigree than him. And it doesn't make sense, but it's because he's setting it up with his strikes. And so the seamless, I think Demetrius Johnson would be another example of someone who's a true all-rounder. but like in general, most fighters, they have something that they're truly world class at, and then they get to about purple belt level in the other things. Like the old saying was, to be a good MMA fighter, you have to be a jack of all trades and a master of one. So you need to be like truly world class in one of those three, and then at least advanced in the other two to be able to not drown. And so like for me, the main reason actually, like truthfully, if I was a little bit more disciplined in my goal of being a complete martial artist, I would have kept up with, you know, my takedowns, whether it be judo or wrestling more, and kept up with my striking a little more. But truthfully, I've went full circle. Like I went from, this is a game and I'm winning, to, oh, this should be serious, self-defense, fighting, all the way back to like, I'm here to have fun and use Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as a tool for personal growth for myself and others. Like, do I love the fact that I teach things in a way that it can be applied to be practical if something real is happening? I love that. But at the same time, a friend of mine told me one time, like, Charles, you're treating every person who comes through these doors like they want to be the best on earth. Like, yeah, of course. It's like, they don't. What? It's like, most people that come through these doors do not want to be the best on earth. And that like messed with my head. I'm like, what do you mean? Then why are they here? Like, it did not register in my head that anyone would want to train and do the things that we do in mixed martial arts or jiu-jitsu or anything, and how like grueling it can be and not want to be the best. I'm like, well, then why? It's like, some people want to lose weight. Some people want to make friends. Some people want self-confidence. Like they have other goals. And like, that was a real wake-up call for me to be like, oh, so when I'm teaching people, I should probably teach them based upon like why they're here, not just my ridiculous, let's be a ninja when we grow up attitude that I had from a child.
When we grow up, which I have yet to do, I still haven't grown up. Your background is one that's different from a lot of fighters because you have a degree in physics. And you're also an accomplished breakdancer. Is that right?
I mean, accomplished is kind of a strong word. Like I have been doing it for a while. I am experienced. Accomplished would mean that I actually like accomplished something. I mean, I learned things in breakdancing. I loved it. It taught me a lot about music. So like breakdancing changed how I listen to music, which to me, of all the things that it did for me, like it gave me an amazing body coordination. Like because of my breakdancing background, learning Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was so much easier. Like my hips have balanced, my body, and even the creativity that you bring from having to mix and match moves when you're dancing was invaluable in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Outside the box. When you're in that chess match, you're able to kind of think outside the box.
Oh yeah, but the main thing is the mixing and matching of pieces. So it's not even thinking outside the box. Think about it like this: like when you're playing Tetris, right? You have all of those squares, and they all fit together different ways. Yeah. And understanding all the ways that you can link things together, that's what breakdancing gave me. But the other thing it did for me that's not at all valuable for fighting, but just valuable for my life, is before I started, and most b-boys don't say breakdancing. It's like a dirty word, but I'm not so traditional that I care. They say either breaking or b-boying or b-girling if they're female. But I realize I'm speaking to like laymen. I just say breakdancing because like I'm not so proud of, but it's the same thing. It's kind of like one of those things, like it's, for a long time, breakdancing was considered derogatory. And so like, use the right vernacular. But I have to communicate with people, so I need them to know what I'm talking about. If I say breaking, they might think I'm talking about breaking boards in karate or breaking my arm. So like, I have to make sure that people know what I'm talking about. But to go back, I used to just hear music as one thing. And I loved hip hop and I loved rock and all kinds of music, but I loved lyrics for the longest time. And so any song that had a long intro, I would get frustrated and like fast forward it. I couldn't appreciate music without lyrics. After dancing, my ears started, because the way that breaking was described to me by one of my friends who taught me, her name's Misty, she's one of the people who taught me how to dance, was that you're like a surfer rides a physical wave, a dancer is riding the waves of the music. And so there's different waves in the music. There's the bass line, there's the snare, there might be horns or a flute that comes in. And the way that you play with those different waves is what makes it a dance and not just gymnastics. Because I already was quite dynamic from my background in karate and kempo and other things. So I could do flips and stuff. And they were like, "You're not dancing." I'm like, "What do you mean?" It's just like, "I'm doing what you guys are doing." I said, "No, you're completely ignoring the music. You're not dancing." And so one day it just clicked, and my ears would feel the bass line. And then they would, oh, the horns came in. And like, then I could literally do what they were talking about. And now, because of that, I can appreciate so much more music than I ever did before. I can sit down, listen to classical music, listen to even like weird, like innovative jazz where things get a little awkward after a while. Like I can listen to so many forms of music that I never could appreciate before because of the time I spent learning how to break. And so I would say experience. I've won precisely one event in my entire career as a b-boy, and it was not a very big event. So like my whole time in Florida, my best I ever did was second place, and it was at a beginner's event, which isn't even a thing. Like one of the really interesting things about b-boying or breakdancing is that the events don't have skill levels. Every event is for everybody. Any other sport I've ever done in my life, there are skill levels, right? There's pee-wee soccer, and then there's higher levels, or there's in karate or kickboxing or jiu-jitsu, you have skill levels and you have belts. In a b-boy jam, which is what the competitions are called, you walk in, it's you versus anybody else who chooses to compete. And it could be your first jam and somebody else's like 100th. Doesn't matter. And
It functions that way, or was that at the time?
I have to check on that. I mean, they now finally have split it between genders. So now they have occasionally they'll have the b-girl battle, a b-boy battle, and I think they also now have kids battles. So the kids don't compete against you. But back then, no. Back then there was 1-on-1s, 2-on-2s, and then there's the crew battle, which sometimes can be up to like 10-on-10, and it didn't matter. Like my very first battle I had, it was a 2-on-2, and it was me and a friend versus 2 children. Like one of the kids was like 11 and the other was like 9. And in my head, I was like, there's no way that I'm losing to these children. But the thing is, the kids were good. The kid was doing head spins and stuff. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't be nice to you. I will not have my first time competing be losing to a child. And so I was merciless. And I beat those kids. But the funny thing was, like, that's one of the really unique things that separates b-boying or breakdancing from other things that I've done. And then so finally, as an adult, I was in Kaohsiung, Taiwan, and there was a dance battle at a nightclub, and I managed to win. That was my only victory was at this small nightclub in a city in Taiwan. Right. And I actually ran into somebody there who's from America who knew one of my friends who danced. Like, that's how small and tight knit the b-boy community is. Like, all the way across the world in Taiwan, I run into an American and he knows my friends from Florida.
That's really
from dancing.
Cool. Yeah, that's really cool. That's the community right there. So from breaking and studying physics at the University of Florida.
Oh yeah, I didn't mention that at all. Sorry about that. So like physics, because you brought that up, I didn't touch on it. So physics really kind of, the sad thing about my career in physics at the University of Florida was just that I was so excited about physics. And then I realized that all the things I love about physics are old hat. Like, no one cares about them anymore. They're understood. Like, I love kinematics, I love motion, I love all these things, but most of these things now are no longer really studied by physicists because they seem to be pretty well understood, like classical dynamics and classical, F equals. I mean, like the stuff you learned in high school. I loved how bodies move through space, and they've all been kind of relegated into engineering or kinesiology at this point, like how the human body moves. But the actual physics department, the only thing, at least when I was in college, that was seen to be an unsolved problem was how a chain, just like a regular chain, like a chain with links, how it falls through space, and how the individual interactions of the links interact with each other and gravity as they fall through space. That was the only kinematics problem left to be solved in the macroscopic world. Like, there are things in like the super nano level, and there's other things like dark gravity and all that stuff at that high in space that are not understood, that are exciting. But the things that I really liked, just no one really cared about them. I was kind of demoralizing. I was like, so pretty much they're like, if you want to study the stuff you want to study, you're going to have to either be an engineer or like go into kinesiology and do one of those things and learn about how people move. But like, our department doesn't really do that because, sorry, not sorry, we kind of get it. Like, I was just like, oh, crap. So I still use some of the stuff I learned from physics. Like jiu-jitsu is physics. Like we use wedges, simple machines, we use levers. Like that understanding has helped me, but it was kind of demoralizing. And then like the real thing that kept me from going into physics graduate school, because I did like some things. I liked chaos theory, and I liked cryogenics. Not cryo. So important distinction. Cryonics is the people who freeze their brains and stuff to try and come back. Gotcha. It's actually junk science. You just turn it. If you ever pay to do cryonics, you're turning your loved one into soup. They're all of them are con artists. Like 100% of those people are con artists. My professor was teaching. Yeah, Walt Disney's not coming back. He's 100% not coming back, unless like maybe the future people figure out a way just to take like one cell of his DNA and regrow him like Jurassic Park. Other than that, he's not coming back. And so, but cryogenics is just the art and science of keeping things super, super, super cold. And that what fascinated me. But I was like, okay. And I talked to one of my professors. His name was Gary Ehas. I still remember him. And he was one of the coolest professors I had in physics, which is like hard because most physicists are socially awkward. And having social skills in the physics department is makes you quite the strange one. And he was just like, look, sadly, like this isn't really the time anymore for that. Like research for physics, you're going to end up just spending most of your career just writing grants. And if you're into things that a business decides they can make money with, or if you want to go to CERN and work in the particle collider, that's a path you could take, or this or that. But most, like, it's very hard to do this. And so like, you just be cautious and like figure it out. Like you don't have to be a physicist. Like you can use your physics degree and all of the way that we taught you how to think about the world and do anything you want. And I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. And so I went to the various labs, and I just wanted to meet one. I told myself, if I met one newly minted physics PhD that was happy, I would go into graduate school.
Okay.
And I did not go into graduate school.
I think I can read between the lines there. Oh man. Well, it all works out for the best in the long run. I'm very, very curious about this. So I gravitated myself towards jiu-jitsu when it came to the different disciplines, and a lot of people do. What was it about jiu-jitsu that won out for you over some of the other stuff? Because I know for many years, American Kempo, I know that you dabbled in kickboxing and judo and all sorts of different things. What was it about jiu-jitsu itself that attracted you, and why do you think so many folks gravitate towards it? Because I mean, I think it's a very, very popular discipline right now. A lot of people going to, Gracie schools and different gyms and whatnot, and kind of dipping a toe in. What is it about jiu-jitsu?
There's a few things. So the thing that first got me in the door was, like I told you, that moment where my 15 years of training meant nothing. And that was me being like, well, and so originally I didn't take it seriously. I just like, let's hack this. All right. If I can just learn enough to get back up off the ground, then I'm done. Like, I don't need to learn this thing that they do. I just need to be able to not let them do it to me. Boom. Easy. And so my original plan was just to train, and I worked on sprawling. I worked on getting back up off the ground, and like that was all I worked on. And because back then, the people I was facing, like I told you, they were professional or amateur fighters. So they all looked like people who, if I looked at them, I thought, this guy beat me, but that makes sense, right? Yeah. Like, he's jacked, he's older than me, he's bigger than me, and he's been wrestling his whole life, or like he's got the cauliflower ears. Like, this guy looks scary. This scary guy beat me. Yeah. My worldview of all my years of training martial arts is intact. Yeah. And this stayed with me until I met these two kids. They're twins. And I always tell this story, and like they hate it because like they don't think they did anything special. But they were 18 at the time. They were just freshmen in college. At this point in time, I think I was about 20, 21, I don't remember. And they were like maybe 125, 135 pounds soaking wet. They were thin, they had glasses. Any muscle tone they had, they hid beautifully. And I probably outweighed each of them by like 40 pounds. Right. And I was at the peak of my physicality. I was the same weight that I am now, but like I was training harder. So 185 pounds of muscle, and I was as fast as I've ever been. I could do gymnastics, like as coordinated. I hadn't torn my knees up yet, so I was healthy. Yeah. Like
You weren't drinking. I remember that.
No, I was not drinking. I didn't drink at all back then. Now I don't even drink that much. So I've gone full circle with that as well. But we'll talk about that in a moment. They just crawled up my back like little spiders and choked me over and over and over again. Because back then I was a white belt. I was a beginner in jiu-jitsu and submission grappling because I started out doing no-gi. I started out doing submission grappling, which is pretty much Brazilian jiu-jitsu without the gi and without Brazil. It's the best way of putting it. My thing that I used to do to keep myself motivated because I was losing in the beginning of grappling, you just lose a lot, is that I would keep going because our gym back then when we trained, we never had clocks. So I would just go and go and go until the person who was beating me got tired, and that would be my moral victory. It'd be like, no one defeats me 26 times in a row. 25, yes, but not 26. And that would be how I kept myself from being demoralized. And so I would never quit and never quit and never quit. And eventually this person would literally just be physically exhausted from submitting me over and over again. And then they would want to break or be just bored and like, oh, this annoying white belt won't leave me alone. And these guys didn't get tired of fucking me up. Of messing me up. They didn't get tired of submitting me over and over again.
Right.
They could tell. I don't know if they could tell that like me not stopping was my ego, or I don't know if it was on purpose, but for me, they were perfectly willing to submit me until I would like acknowledge that I gave up.
Yeah.
And I don't even know how many times the exact same thing. Just crawled on my back and choked me. And I try something else. Crawl on my back and choke me. I'll go harder. Crawl on my back and choke me. I'll go faster. Crawl on my back and choke me. Just over and over again with the same move.
Huh.
And eventually I had to be like, okay, I'm done. And that was the moment when I was like, okay, I need to learn this because there's no reason for this person who I'm bigger, stronger, faster, more experienced than, not more experienced, not in grappling, but in fighting for sure, to be able to manhandle me so easily. And that took me into being obsessed with it. And then what killed the other martial arts off was that I love food. I love cooking and I love food. And I love eating food. And if you've ever done any striking martial art, you know that no matter how good you are, you get little tiny cuts in your mouth. Mm-hmm. Like little tiny cuts, so that when you go home and you want to eat your donbori or your sushi bowl or your pizza or your lasagna or whatever you love, it doesn't taste quite as good.
Yeah.
And one day I was like, I get to have all of the mental stimulation, physical stimulation, fitness, and I don't have to have pain in my mouth. And then also what really cemented me into almost exclusive to grappling was a few years later when I was still occasionally doing some Kung Fu, I was training with a friend and I kicked him in the ribs. And I came really close to breaking his ribs. Oof. And then he was one of the few people that I would spar hard with because he was a big, strong guy. Like most of the time I'd be very careful. I'd never really hit full force on a lot of the people I trained with just because I didn't want to hurt them. But he was such a big, strong guy that I didn't worry about him. And now my friend can't train. He feels like crap. And it really affected him. Oh, God, I don't like hurting people, which is part of the reason why I'm not a professional mixed martial artist is because it's not a good thing to be in the ring with someone who's perfectly fine tearing you apart and be worrying about them. It's not a good mindset to have.
Yeah. Dad always kind of told us to go at about 70%.
That's a good coach.
And, most of us respected that. And every now and then you'd be grappling with somebody that went a little harder than maybe they should be going. And to be truthful, when you're young and you have a lot of, I don't know if it's bravado or what it is, but when you're younger, you stupidly will match that. And that's where injuries can happen. Instead of recognizing hey, this is maybe not the right way to train. It's well, not gonna, what I mean? I'm not gonna.
Well, the cool thing about jiu-jitsu is, and part of the other thing that I love about it is that I don't, unless I'm against an elite level black belt, or honestly these days not even a black belt. Like these purple and brown belts are getting so good these days. But unless I'm against someone who's an elite level competitor, I shouldn't have to bring to bear all my physicality. Yeah, I really shouldn't. But that's the cool thing about Brazilian jiu-jitsu is that I can win and I can go hard, but I don't have to hurt you. if I'm in a kickboxing match with somebody and I pull my kick and they walk through me and punch me in the face, I have to be like, oh, hey, just so you know, I could have hit you. It makes things awkward. And they're like, oh, yeah, you could have hit me. Yeah. And now I have to, like, to protect myself, I have to hit this person harder to stop them from hurting me. But in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I don't have to do that. If I'm enough better than you, if the skill gap is big enough, I can control you and submit you, or even just control you without having to hurt you. And that's the thing that I love about it, is that choice. I don't have to injure you in order to control you. Whereas in striking arts, like, how am I controlling you? I'm controlling you by hitting you. And even if I'm going to hit things that aren't going to permanently damage you, right? If I'm going to hit, I'm still going to do damage to your body. And so
couple years in, you gain the maturity of realizing that if the other person's trying to muscle things, they think
they're going to gas out. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. You let them tire themselves out. Just keep doing what you're doing. Don't give them your back. Don't let them isolate a limb. You know what I mean? Let them tire themselves out, and then you can kind of embarrass them that way. So I think that's how I handled it after a couple of years. But it took me a minute. I'm not the brightest crayon in the box.
Oh no, we all go through it. I think it's a phase, but also those guys at the gym that are going ham, as long as they're not physically injuring people, I think they're valuable, because a brand new person with muscle who's spazzing out is the closest approximation to the type of person you're going to get into an altercation with if you ever have to defend yourself.
True.
And so, like, to me, like, a untrained, physically fit person who is afraid, because that's what makes those people spaz out so much, is that they're afraid of getting hurt or they're afraid of losing. And that makes them turn up the volume and they get so tense. And if you can't handle someone who's doing that, then you're not really doing a martial art anymore.
Well, that the fear comes from, I think, maybe a lack of discipline and having that skill gap, not knowing what they're doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I think that it's necessary. It's necessary to be able to deal with that guy in class without injuring them, which is why when that guy exists in a gym, if you're at a good gym, the coach will not put them with other beginners because they're dangerous to other beginners. But for your more advanced students, they're useful, and the more advanced students should be able to teach them how to calm down.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you my secret to stop getting injured. I used to get injured all the time, like a crazy amount. I used to be just permanently injured, like no matter what. Like as soon as one thing healed, something else was hurt.
Yeah.
I did two things, and I got this from a guy named Christian Graugart. He's the guy who runs BJJ Globetrotters, and he trains in a ridiculous amount and has managed to keep himself pretty injury-free for most of the years. And he said he always warms up. And so I got to warm up for myself, which is like a head-to-toe check-in where I'm just moving each joint of my body and checking in on my injuries.
Mm-hmm.
And then just getting like a light sweat, whether it be shrimping or doing gymnastica, or occasionally I'll break a little bit and just move around. And then I'll roll. And then if I'm rolling with someone and I have to go more than 80%, I just lose.
Okay.
I decide that, like, if I need more than 80%, if I have to dig deep and like redline my body, I should just lose and just get better at jiu-jitsu. The answer is I should be better. I don't need to be a better physical specimen. 80% of me, unless I'm facing a world-class competitor, 80% of me should be enough. If it's not, then there's something wrong with my jiu-jitsu that I should improve. And that attitude has led to me having so much more growth and so many less injuries. Every single time I've been injured, it's been because I was like, no, I got to beat this guy. And I push. And I end up redlining my body and I have an injury now. Crap.
Well, that's very profound. And that comes with the years that you've been doing this. You're teaching jiu-jitsu now. I want to get into what you're doing now.
One of the things I teach at some of the camps for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Globetrotters. It's an organization that runs camps all over the world. And then I also travel within the United States and abroad teaching my own personal seminars and training camps. And then this new thing that I've been doing, that I'm doing here at Albuquerque right now, is I run a thing where I'll be a substitute teacher for your gym. So most gym owners don't get to take vacation. Right. They literally, and or
they get injured,
they get injured. So like the owner of this gym, is having shoulder surgery. His name is David Binder, really great guy. And so while he's recovering from his shoulder surgery, I'm here at the gym and I'm kind of teaching his classes for him while he's injured. And then after I leave, his shoulder ideally will be back to snuff and he'll be able to teach the classes. And so And so whether it be a personal vacation or recovering from an injury. And so in the past, I've done week-long stays and week-and-a-half stays in Tel Aviv, Israel, at a gym called Octopus. That was the first gym that like really let me come in and teach all their classes and trusted me, and it worked out really, really well. Did that a few times before COVID. And I hope to do it as well. There's a gym in Eindhoven called Sport Vision that my friend Joachim runs, that we're talking about me possibly doing something similar like that next year, so that he can take a vacation with his family. So that's kind of my gig right now, is seminars and stuff, private lessons. I have a DVD on the website called BJJ Fanatics called Leg Locks 101. But that's my life. I want to share jiu-jitsu and help people learn from it. I want to, whether it be whatever they're there for. Like sometimes all people learn from jiu-jitsu is just that they're capable of a lot more than they thought. And if that's all you learn and you don't become the next Ultimate Fighter, like that's fine. Like that's a really good life lesson that can help you outside of, grappling.
You just answered my next question, which is why should somebody consider learning martial arts, learning jiu-jitsu, if someone's like on the fence about getting into it. And I think that's a beautiful answer there, is becoming greater than you currently are. And
oh yeah, it's just there's a lot of great like little quotes people have about it, but like it's getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, because as gentle as jiu-jitsu is, which is a bit of a misnomer, it's not comfortable. Like having a large sweaty dude laying on your chest and like laughing as he when I first started training, I had a guy take a phone call while I was underneath his pin and have an entire phone conversation, and I could not escape.
Yikes.
And I was like, well, this is terrifying and horrible. I was struggling and flailing about like a salmon, and it just didn't matter. And so if you can get through that, now mind you, do I think that was very professional? Of course not. Would I do it to someone? Probably not. But for me, and like being that like hot-headed, not even hot-headed, but like stubborn, like 21-year-old, like that was a valuable moment for me to realize like how much I don't know. And everyone needs something. Some people need to be trained more delicately and be given the nurturing approach. Like I don't think that the trial by fire approach that I came up in is the only way or even the best way. Unfortunately, like at that time, if you wanted to learn, there's only one gym in town or two gyms in town. So you kind of had to deal with the outdated training methods. But now I think you can nurture someone up and give them slow amounts of, what do I call it, adversity for them to overcome. Mm-hmm. And that's really valuable to them, because you want to have adversity. If you don't have any adversity, you don't grow. But you also don't want to break people. I think a lot of great people that could have really enjoyed this thing were lost to the kind of trial by fire, iron sharpens iron training methods of 15 years ago.
Right. Well, let me ask you this. I mean, what was it like to take the leap of faith to leave a more traditional career path and do this full time? Like was that, I don't know, did that take a certain revelation, or was that kind of a scary thing to do? Like, hey, am I going to be able to make ends meet doing this? Like what was it like to kind of step out of, you know what I mean by traditional, right?
It was absolutely terrifying. It really was. I had some money saved up. I've always been pretty frugal with my money. And so I had a little bit of a cushion there. And it was around the time of like the 2017 Bitcoin boom. So I had a little bit of money in Bitcoin that like in my mind was gonna go to the moon. Everything was going to be great. Now, mind you, 2018, it all crashed horribly right when I had started traveling. So that was horrible timing. Yeah, it was really just knowing that I remembered in college, I was on financial aid and scholarship, how little money I could survive on. I knew that because I knew how to cook and because I was perfectly okay living very, very humbly, that if all I had to do, because at that point in time, I'd been a professional for 8.5 years. I worked at a natural gas company. I worked in a traditional job. I had been getting promotions. I'd been paid very well. And my lifestyle was significantly more affluent than it was when I was, a struggling college student. But I knew that I could still live like that college student if I had to. So that was one thing. It's like, I can go back to going and making way with less. I know that I can. And I knew that in traveling, there was this program called mat surfing from the same people, BJJ Globetrotters, that anywhere on earth, if there was a jiu-jitsu school, there was somebody who would let me sleep on their couch or let me sleep in their guest room for free in exchange for just talking to them about my travels or maybe teaching them a private lesson or something. So I have this group of people. And I first learned how good subcultures are when I went on study abroad in Spain back in 2005. 2005, I got trapped in Barcelona. I missed my train and I had no money. And there were some b-boys dancing on the streets. And I went up to them and like with my poor Spanish, because I was on study abroad to learn Spanish, I did not know it very well, explained my situation, and they let me dance with them, and they gave me a free place to stay in exchange for performing with them.
Wow.
These people I had never met before. That's awesome. And so like I knew that the jiu-jitsu community was just as tight-knit as the b-boy community, and that at worst case scenario, I would have a place to sleep while I saved up some sort of money. I just made sure that I always had enough money for the plane ticket home, like just in case I had enough money for the plane ticket home. But like I knew that if I didn't do this now, I wouldn't do it.
Right.
Like I'm not gonna, like once I have a family and kids, like that's gonna be so much harder. I'm like at that point in time, I had a girlfriend at the beginning of my travels. At the end of my travels, I did not. I have a new girlfriend now who is also a traveler and like matches my lifestyle and is amazing. But like I knew that I didn't have kids. To me, like because I know that like once I have kids, I want to be there. I want to be there for my kids. I don't want to be an absent father. Like my father wasn't absent on purpose. Like it's not his fault that he passed away. But like I want to be there for my kids. And so like I know that once that happens, I feel horribly selfish to leave them. And so I knew this was my time. I had to do this now, or I was never going to have the courage to do it. And then slowly but surely, I just kind of got lucky that my personality and my way of doing things meshed with the people that I met. Because when I first started trying to teach places, people just said no. Like people were just like, "You're not a world champion. I've never heard of you." No. Click. Like, oh. Or in the case of a Facebook click, it's just no more responses.
Right.
And so I slowly but surely just went to open mats around the world. And my whole goal, my whole theory of learning, of getting people to respect you in jiu-jitsu is rolling in a manner that they don't think that you suck and they don't think that you're an asshole.
Yeah.
If you can accomplish those two things, people will at least want to have you back in their gym.
Oh, yeah.
And I knew because I've been teaching martial arts since I was 13. I started teaching karate or American Kempo when I was 13. So, and I had a minor in education in college. So like, even if I'm not like the greatest jiu-jitsu practitioner on earth, right? I have all the tournaments that I've won are very small and not all that big of a deal. Like,
right.
I've won a bunch of tournaments, but like they're small ones. They're local tournaments, regional tournaments. I've never won a national championship or world championship. But I know for a fact with my travels, I can step into just about any open mat on earth and I can hold my own. I'm not going to win. Like I went to Craig Jones's leg locker camp in Thailand and just got completely demolished by Craig Jones. And he didn't even leg lock me. That was the depressing part. I wanted to be leg locked and he just wrist locked me and did all kinds of other dirty things instead. And I'm just like, now I see why there's shirts that say fuck Craig Jones. And now I understand why he has these shirts. Like he's a great guy, but he's so frustrating. And then like I have my friend Quentin in Savannah who absolutely demolishes me. I'm like, I need that. I need that humbling people beating me up thing to remind me that I'm not God's gift to the green earth. Like I need that in my life. So anytime that I start thinking I'm too good, my girlfriend Natasha, she will be like, "Hey Charles, what's up? Like, you want to go to Savannah?" And we'll drive to Savannah and hang out with Quentin and his wife. And I get completely demolished and get reminded of where I stand in the pecking order of things. And it's necessary.
To get humbled every now and then. It's extremely, extremely valuable and necessary. You've been all over the world then. I mean, this kind of lifestyle.
I haven't finished my goal. So my goal was to teach Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in some capacity on all the continents. So far, I've got Asia, North America, Europe, and I don't know. I guess Middle East is if you count Israel as Middle East. I don't think Israel counts as Africa. So I haven't gotten Africa yet, and I've kind of got South America. I taught a free class in Colombia when I was there, but I've never been to Australia, and Antarctica hasn't happened either. So my goal for 2022 is to try and attack those, try and get to Africa, try and get to Oceania / Australia, and then if I can pull off something miraculous, a friend of mine in Wisconsin and I have a plot of trying to pull off a jiu-jitsu camp in Antarctica. And so we're looking into like flights and all this shenanigans and trying to pull off a trip to Antarctica with like, even if it's just 5 people or 10 people, like, and then so that I can teach in Antarctica and check it off the list. And that could be a fun little thing. Like, you meet the coolest people doing this. Like, I've met such great people. And so I just love it. And so like for example, like Joshua Janus is a guy I met at one of Christian's camps in Arizona because we were roommates. Both him and his girlfriend and me and my girlfriend. And like, he invited me out to Wisconsin. And I had no idea how beautiful Wisconsin was. I would never have chosen just to randomly go to Wisconsin if it wasn't for jiu-jitsu. I didn't, and it was gorgeous. I never would have thought Wisconsin was so pretty. Never would have guessed that. It's allowed me to do so many things.
Yeah, it's a door opener for sure. And it's a lifestyle that I think it's unique. Not everybody listening to the program right now has been able to experience that. And it's great to hear about it and learn about it. I look forward to Kung Fu Penguin when you get down to Antarctica.
Hey, I will keep you in the loop. And actually, if you'd like to come, we will. I'll let you know. I'll see if there's some tickets or something. We're probably going to try and do 2 camps, one in Argentina down by Tierra del Fuego, and then one in Antarctica back to back.
Awesome.
So you get fire and ice. That would be that's the plan if we could pull it off. But it might happen 22 or 2023. It all depends on COVID and international regulations letting us do things. But we have some schemes in the works. So,
well, to the listeners, if you have, even if you haven't seen Ninja Turtles in a while, I think definitely consider getting into jiu-jitsu. It's an incredible discipline and a wonderful life journey, life skill to add to your tool belt. Where can people find you on social media, Charles?
I am on Instagram, and it's just at Charles Harriott. Charles spelled normal. Harriott spelled Harriott. I have a website, charlesharriott.com. I'm on Facebook. It's Charles Harriott. Luckily, my last name is spelled oddly, so I just got all my social media and internet real estate with my name.
Very nice.
I have a DVD on BJJ Fanatics called Leg Locks 101. If you want to learn how to do leg locks without injuring yourself or training partners and realizing that it's not so scary. Like, things don't have to be scary. You don't have to hurt each other. Like, you can learn things without being a douche. Like, it's perfectly possible. That's kind of my general message. Like, you can be friendly and smile and still learn this art. It's not about being a meathead.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate you being on here. You're definitely welcome back anytime.
That sounds great.
Fun, man.
All right. Much love. Thank you so much for having me, Steve.
All right. And that'll do it for another episode of the Know It Some podcast. My thanks again to this week's guest, Charles Harriott, for your time. Really had fun with that conversation. Looking forward to rolling with you next time you're in town, brother. Folks, if you have not done so already, please head on over to either Apple or Podchaser. Leave us a 5-star ranking or review. That is the very best way to support the show, and it helps us to bring you interesting content week after week, bring you the guests that you love, and we appreciate it greatly. Folks, another great way to support the show would be to follow us on social media and like and share our posts with your friends. The way to do that is to find us on social media at Know It Some Pod. We are all over social media at Know It Some Pod, whether that's Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, you name it. We are there at Know It Some Pod. And you could always send us your feedback by sending us a DM there or emailing us. Our email address is knowitsomepod@gmail.com. We greatly appreciate all the support. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next week.